It is now 7 p.m., 14 April 2025, and I call this meeting of the Planning Commission to order. May I please have a roll call?
David Dahl.
Here.
Margot Mooring. Here. Nicholas Andrews.
Here.
Debbie Cole. Justin Henderson.
Here.
Dean Haddock.
Here.
Matthew Filer.
Here. Okay, are there any changes or corrections to the minutes dated 10 February 2025 by any member? If not, may I have a motion to approve the minutes?
Motion to approve. Second.
All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
All those opposed signify by saying nay. Motion to approve the minutes from 10 February 2024 is approved. Are there any changes or corrections to the minutes dated 24 February 2025 noted by any member? If not, may I have a motion to approve the minutes?
Motion to approve. Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed, please signify by saying nay. Motion to approve the minutes from 24 February 2025 is approved. Is there any correspondence for any item on the agenda?
No, there is not.
Do we have any old business?
We have no old business.
Okay, on to new business.
We have,
I am going to read this just to get it out.
Please do.
Okay. This would normally be to the public, although we lack the public currently.
You gotta have the.
The Planning Commission meetings are generally quasi-judicial in nature. All decisions of the Commission will be based on competent and substantial evidence, including testimony provided in this meeting. Any person who is not an applicant or agent that wishes to speak will need to fill out a speaker card located on the side table by the door and turn them into the city clerk. Each member of the public will be given 3 minutes to speak on each item. Please refrain from speaking from the audience, and applause or cheering will not be allowed. And please silence your cell phones. Mr. Vice Chair, can you please read the application by title?
Yeah, may we please have the staff presentation for PC number 05-25, 1310 3rd Street South.
Through the chair, this is PC 0525. It is a conditional use application for the transfer of ownership of an existing gasoline station. Property is located at 1310 South 3rd Street at the intersection of 13th and 10. The gasoline station was built originally in 1983 under the previous LDC, which would apply in this case because they applied prior to the adoption of the new code. Conditional use approvals for gas stations are non-transferable, and therefore the new owner must seek approval to continue operating the gas station. The property is shared with another commercial use as an in-tenant space adjacent to the gas station and convenience store. The gas pump island is actually shared between the two entities, and there's a recorded easement for that purpose. And again, it's been that way for many decades. The subject parcel, again, is located at the intersection of 3rd Street South and 13th Avenue South on the southwest corner. Adjacent uses include... I just realized I have a picture. Adjacent uses include office uses to the west and south, a commercial bank to the east across 3rd Street South, and a commercial strip center to the north across 13th Avenue. The proposed use does not conflict with the standards set forth in Chapter 34.533. Get used to that, it's going to be weird for a while. Of the Jacksonville Beach Land Development Code. Generally, the C1 zoning district is intended to implement commercial land uses of the comprehensive plan in areas that can be within close proximity to residential uses and not create a nuisance. As noted above, there are no adjacent residential uses, and the previous use of the gas station has existed since 1983 without any known conflicts of use or nuisance to adjacent properties. Based on the provided application and analysis in the staff report, the Planning and Development Department recommends approval of the proposed conditional use request.
Thank you. As a reminder, each member of the public will be given 3 minutes to speak when we open the public hearing. Does any commission member have any ex parte communication to disclose? All right, hearing none, would the applicant please come forward to be sworn in and give any presentation?
They do not appear to be present.
They don't.
No presence.
Okay, Commission members, please refrain from interrupting the presentation and hold all questions to the end. And then we would ask if they have any questions. Are we, to the staff here, since we don't have somebody to present this, can we consider it or should we?
You should open and then close the public hearing.
Okay. All right, so the applicant's not present, but I do have to open and close the public hearing. So I'm now going to open the public hearing.
Do we have any speaker cards? No. None. We have none. No speaker cards.
All right. Is there anyone in the audience who has not filled out a speaker card that wishes to speak? If so, please fill out a speaker card before you leave. All right, I'm now going to close the public hearing. All right, is there a motion?
Motion to approve for discussion.
Second.
Okay, I will let you know that in general, I am not a fan of approving conditional use applications when there's nobody here to represent them. So I don't know how we would proceed other than tabling it until we can get somebody to speak.
Mr. Chair, I think that's correct.
I don't disagree.
I honestly
I was going to
don't
motion
remember.
the same.
I don't think we changed that in this code, but traditionally, you can grant or not grant a deferment. It's usually policy to grant at least one because there could be communication errors. But outside of that, you're welcome to vote with or without the applicant present.
If I could just add, this is one of those instances that I think shouldn't be in the code. The idea that a change in ownership would require you to come back to us. So there's been no complaints about the use since 1983. So I agree the applicant, I would prefer for the applicant to be here, but I do think this is one of those things that is sort of overkill or something. So I would just express that opinion. But
Right.
I'll
So
go
is it?
with it.
So does it? Would it matter if they're here or if they're not here?
It wouldn't matter to me because I don't see how we could say no.
If I could just add, since 1983, that's a pretty long time ago, and we are talking about like a facility that might hold volatile chemicals, compounds, these sorts of things. I imagine that would not be germane to the discussion here, open for conversation, since there are other regulations that would probably come into play there, come into force there. So am I right to say that any kind of debate or conversation with the public or the applicant would not be related to any of those subjects?
That would be correct. There are some standards that our building department is required to follow for the installation of the pumps on the surface and the electrical associated with that, but all the regulations associated with the tanks, how they're built, how they're installed, how they're upgraded, that falls to the state.
Great, thank you.
Okay, I'll finish with Margo noted. You're right. This is a pretty straightforward application. I am slightly concerned about the precedent of people not showing up, even though it's a requirement for them to submit these things. However, this has been a gas station, as has been noted, since 1983. This is just something that is a weird requirement for change of ownership with the Land Development Code.
I would add, Mr. Chair, that you've got a very robust package here, and there's a lot of time spent working this thing out. So I would agree that I don't think we need the proponent here either.
Through the chair, if I can just make a quick comment, because this is not applicable to this application, but it's a good opportunity to discuss it. The new code has standardized conditions for certain uses, gas stations being one of them. The design and lighting and those sorts of things are structured and built into it, so those would apply normally. Obviously, a lot of ours are going to be non-conforming based on the fact that they've been here for a long time, which would be the case with this one as well. But those would apply typically to new gas stations or potentially if it was completely torn down and rebuilt. So those are in the conditional use section of the new code. You can kind of take a look at that, but that's how that would work.
Okay, thank you.
Chair, before we call a vote, I share your concern with if there's a requirement for the applicant to be here and we can defer, that might be advisable than to set the precedent of just moving forward with approving an application with no show from the applicant. If there is no legitimate concern there, I don't want to make a sticking point of it, but it doesn't sound like necessarily the right precedent to set.
I would concur. However, Christian, just to clarify from the staff, there is no requirement for them to be here.
I'm checking.
Okay, thanks.
Right. So, and we get to a vote here. We're essentially voting yay or nay on it based off its merit, or we're kind of voting yay or nay, nay more so because they're not here.
My concern on this one does not have anything to do with the actual application.
Right.
It's the procedural
Process.
part of
Yeah. So we're voting nay
whether
on the
they're here.
process, not nay on the
it.
actual issue.
A nay would be yes.
Okay.
Because
would
of
be
the
a
process.
Check.
It'd be a deferral.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Either way.
A nay would be a deferral.
Well, we have a motion right now.
We could amend the motion to a deferral, and then we could change that. We could make a motion to defer to another meeting, essentially, versus a straight denial of application.
If we defer this time though, and then it comes back around and no one shows, are we just going to approve it the next time?
Probably
If it's
so.
on merit, you know?
I mean, if they slide it in on a day when we got 4 or 5 things, who knows?
Yeah.
So Christian, you're still looking to see if this is a hard requirement. That's fine.
So another way to approach this, if they're required, they're required. We should definitely get that point of fact. If they're not, I think another way to approach this would be, are there any questions that any of the members would tentatively ask to the applicant? And if there are not, then perhaps we can approve it.
Yep. Thank you. So we'll hold here for a minute to see if we can find out if it's a procedural requirement for them to be.
And Heather, maybe answer this.
it-
I would assume that with a new owner, when they come in, if they have any plans on like, hey, we're going to change a whole bunch of stuff, then that has to go through a whole nother set of. They're basically, hey, as is, we can use it like it is. As soon as we start changing things, now we have a whole nother approval process.
Yeah, depending on what they're doing. There's nothing I see in the code that requires them to be in attendance. We haven't previously required them. It's obviously well advised in case, like you mentioned, if there's questions. In this case, again, I have no concerns since it's been there for so long with no apparent issues. Typically they are in attendance, but I'm looking at the application. It looks like they're not local, so that could be part of why they're not here. Is that they're actually out of Brandon, Florida. So.
And my concern too is like if they were here and they presented and we all voted yes and we moved on with our lives, do we need to push that out to another meeting just based off of they didn't come see us?
All right. Well, as the last point for me, what really comes down to is if they're required to be here. If they weren't told they were required to be here, then I have to give them a little bit of credit for that. So,
I'll share that I don't have any direct questions. If no one else has any questions, I won't hold back a motion to approve.
is there any further discussion? May I have a roll call vote on the motion?
David Dahl,
Yes.
Margot Mooring,
Yes.
Justin Henderson,
Yes.
Dean Haddock,
Yes.
Nicholas Andrews.
Yes. So, okay, we can move on to agenda item B. We're going to do the planning commission report, I believe, at the very end, correct? Or
Yes.
planning staff report at the end, after items B and C.
We have a training attached, and then I don't really have any specific
report.
updates. So,
Okay, so
but usually
let's-
that is at the end of the department's briefing.
Let's move on to agenda item B, the bylaws.
Okay. So after our last meeting where we had discussed the bylaws, which I think was the beginning of February, I took your comments and hopefully captured them all. There were some changes that were made strictly to make them compliant with the way the new code is written, changing some language and stuff. They are substantially similar to what you guys saw the first time, but the term limits were actually taken out by council, so those weren't in the code to begin with by the time this got finalized. There are some specifics on attendance, and mostly because we had a very vague thing in our code that said the chair had to notify the mayor if somebody didn't attend, and nobody knew how that worked. And we had it happen once with the Board of Adjustment, and everybody felt really awkward. So this is an attempt to keep track of that. It's pretty much just courtesy if you're not going to be here to let the chair or the planning staff know. That way we can ensure that we have a quorum. If it looks like we're going to have an issue, we'll usually contact you that day or the day before to make sure, we can get 4 people here. But that's less of an issue with you guys than it has been with some other boards. The big takeaway is that a lot of this is substantially similar to what was in the code previously, but anything that's not specifically related to the board in its form and function as far as legality in the code, and how council interacts, how you make recommendations, those sort of things that are legislative. Anything policy related or how the board functions procedurally, we've put in bylaws. And the goal is, again, this is an attempt to try and give you guys a little bit more authority over how you run your meetings. And hopefully, if you want to now, we can actually look at changing days and times for meetings because they're not concreted into the new code. We moved them here. The new code says generally you'll meet twice a month. So that's pretty much the gist of it. On the back end, you probably noticed we have kind of like what's on the board here, but we've added more conditions and changed them a little bit. So the first page and the addendum are these same kind of conditions that are on the laminated sheet. The second element is kind of the chair script that I had made a while ago, but I've tried to make it more of a kind of a play, so you can kind of have the stage direction as well as the wording. Obviously, if you want to mess with that as the chair or vice chair, you're more than welcome to. It's really just a guideline. And then on the back is basically the model motion for approval or denial, depending on how that makes sense. And we've assigned some roles and responsibilities for the chair and vice chair that pretty much mimic how the way council runs their meetings. It's efficient. And again, if you have a motion on the floor and nobody wants to vote for it, it just dies. It doesn't hurt anything to have it there. But procedurally, it's typically how Robert's rules and our code want you to function so that there's something to consider, not just kind of raw discussion.
Do we operate that correctly?
No, you guys did great. Yeah. We are going to do some procedural practice training a little bit later in the year. We're just still trying to get our feet underneath us with the new code, but the goal is to kind of do that every year, to just do a refresher with everybody. We'll have a couple of model motions and things to consider and just go through that and the basic sunshine stuff. So we'll have that on the schedule at some point for at least once a year with you guys and all the other boards, of course. I'm happy to answer any questions. I know some of you have seen this before.
So I actually read through the bylaws. I didn't have any questions. Anybody who does, please bring them up. But I think this is a much better way of approaching things than what we had previously, which was kind of, if you will, hard-coded. Nothing we could change. So.
Also, I specifically didn't staple this, so if it does pass, you can 3-hole punch it and put it in your binder.
Is it appropriate to offer amendments at this stage?
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, that's a good point. So anything related to the bylaws as far as their procedures, meeting times, those sorts of things, it's set up so every member of the board gets to vote on those, including the alternates, because days and times and things like that do affect them as well. So it seemed fair to have them participate in the procedural part of the code.
Cool. So I just have 3 hopefully small things. One, to the chair, I believe it was pointed out at one point that the new term limits might overly limit an appointee's term by, for example, if you're if you're appointed to the board and you fill somebody's seat on a vacancy, and then you move again to another vacant seat, then your term could actually be extremely abbreviated compared to the term limits that are specified here. So I don't have any specific language to offer here, but I do think there's an opportunity to just make this a little bit more fair if somebody goes through the motions or goes through the process of getting appointed and then makes it onto the board, that they have the opportunity to serve the full term.
So you're specifically, if I understand you correctly, you're specifically referring to the fact that if you replace somebody who vacates their seat on the commission, you inherit their term?
Exactly. It says in the final sentence on term of office under number 1, for those following along at home, when a person is appointed to fill out the term of a departing member, that person's term shall end at the time the departing member's term would have ended. I don't know what the rationale is on that, or if it makes too much of a difference, but in my mind, that would reset that person's, or I guess if you're, well, let me not try to solution here, but I do see a potential issue where somebody could have a
Sure.
limited term.
In essence, that's the way it's written in the code, and that's the way council does their appointments for seats. It's not our decision; it happens at their level. So that's how they've always done it procedurally. We didn't change that in the code, so that's kind of a legacy thing. If that is something you guys wish to bring up to them, we can certainly pass that along. But as it stands now, that is actually in the code, and it's been that way for decades.
Yeah, and if I could add, Christian, one of the reasons it's done that way is there was a movement about maybe 6 or so years ago to make all the board reappointments or new appointments happen around the same time, so that council wasn't doing their interviews and everything all year long. They were trying to kind of keep it to 1 or 2 times a year. So that's one of the reasons that is in there. They got everyone on a consistent schedule with their terms and stuff like that, and kind of goes hand in hand again with how council operates as well. And it does apply to all of our boards.
Okay, that makes sense.
I completely understand Dean's concern here, because I did that. It happened to me. I went down by a year for my appointment. The only justification I found for that is that if I'm correct here, their council is under no obligation to elevate an alternate to a regular commission.
That's correct.
seat.
It's simply a decision.
So you're
that they would make.
actually, it's the same way it's done if somebody vacates council, is what you just said, right? After that, I don't know that it actually applies, because once you're on the commission as a regular member, even if you move to chair or vice chair or anything, you're still serving out your term, correct?
Correct. So let's say you filled a term, I think yours was a year of someone else's
Yes.
that left, then you get reappointed and the clock starts over, so now you get a full 4-year.
But
You're not stuck to a shortened or abbreviated cycle.
But there's a definite impact when you go from alternate to a full member.
Right. Again, I don't have any specific language here, but I feel like we could shore that up to where everybody gets a fair shake.
Well, again, that would be something we'd have to take to council. So
If we were to approve of the bylaws as is with this particular item, we could come back to it for review and amendment at a subsequent date, right?
absolutely, that's
Just
the
adding
whole
it as an
point, is
agenda.
that you guys can learn from it and make it work better over time. I wouldn't recommend doing it every meeting, but at a minimum, we can go through it, annually, like we're doing with the code, just to make sure we're capturing everything that's a stumbling block.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, not an urgent issue, but one that I think might be worth revisiting, and maybe we can kick around some specific language on that. I have 2 other ones. One, Section H, establishing a regular meeting schedule. Number 1, general. Meetings may be called, this is halfway down the first paragraph, additionally, meetings may be called by the chair at the request of 3 members of the commission in writing. Sorry, I misread that. You can disregard. That one's fine. The 5:30 p.m. one is the only other one that, was there a vote on 5:30?
That's the earliest you could start. And I believe that's related to state statutes for land use related things. Like, it has to be after a certain hour.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not positive on that, because I know Jacksonville's Planning Commission meets at like 1 o'clock in the afternoon, but it's always been the city's policy to have evening meetings. But since you guys have the ability to move that time now, we just want to make sure that there was a baseline that it's never before 5:30.
Okay. As long as everybody's on board with that new time, it's quite a bit earlier.
This is well, we'd have to change the meeting.
So that's not changing the time. It's just saying can't be before 5:30.
Oh, great. Even better.
Actually, technically, it says it can't be before 5:31
Perfect. Those are my
because they
questions.
will always be held after 5:30 p.m. Small thing.
Shall we motion to approve? Or does he have
You
to?
have 3 things?
That-
Oh, okay.
Very small thing.
He disposed of the second one.
I will say I'll probably give you guys another copy because I realize this doesn't have page numbers. And now that I've taken the paperclip off, I have no idea what order it's in. So I'll get you a fresh copy by the next meeting, but
So are we,
feel free to hang on to this one.
understanding is we want to, you're looking for us to approve these bylaws?
That's correct.
All right, do I have a motion?
Motion to approve bylaws as written.
Second.
May I have a roll call, please?
Everybody.
Margot Mooring,
Yes.
Justin Henderson,
Yes.
David Dahl, Dean Haddock,
Yes.
Matthew Filer,
Yes.
Nicholas Andrews.
Yes.
Cool. All right. Moving right along.
Okay,
Picture.
let's move on to agenda item C, which is our LDC training. And how do we want to run this? We'll just turn it over to you, Heather, or who's doing the training?
Yeah. Where's your PowerPoint?
Okay, over to the staff.
I thought you had a PowerPoint. What? You said you.
Remember my microphone. The copy that I gave you guys at your seats, it's not the entire code, gave you what we felt is the most important sections for you guys to have. If there's something that you want that isn't in there, please let me know. We'll print it for you or get it to you in some other way. It's not on MuniCode yet in its entirety. It's still in the ordinance format. So once that's posted, it'll be a lot easier to look at online. But for now, we gave you Articles 1 through 6. Again, these are the ones that are going to be most pertinent for you to look at based on decisions you're making, requests you're hearing. And if there is something else that we need you to have for consideration of an application, we'll make sure to get that to you as part of the agenda packet. But some of the things I just wanted to run through with you are the major changes that really impact the Planning Commission in particular, because Board of Adjustment is looking at different types of applications. The standards are different, so we want to really keep this focused to just what the Planning Commission is going to be focused on. One thing I want to make sure that everyone knows is that the definitions section has probably doubled. I think we had talked about this a few times, so we tried to capture every term in the code. I'm certain we missed maybe one or two, but as we go through and a term pops up and we don't have a definition for it, we'll add it. Christian and I already have a list. I don't think there's anything on it quite yet, but prepared to start, documenting those things that maybe we need to come in 6 months to a year with a glitch bill to say, we need to clarify this, or we forgot a definition for that, those sorts of things. Hopefully they're all small things and not anything earth-shattering. But big things for the Planning Commission to really focus on is the kind of the new process we have for conditional uses, since that's the bulk of what you guys see. Maybe a couple of rezoning applications every year, but primarily it's the conditional use applications. And so if you go to Article 5 in your packet, there should be a little 5 tab there. You'll see how we've edited the conditional use section, and for a handful of uses, we've provided some standard baseline conditions that will be applicable to every application. That's not to say that staff wouldn't recommend additional ones as part of our review and recommendation. It's certainly possible, but let's go ahead and take a look at, for example, I'm going to scroll to it. Bear with me. The standards haven't changed for conditional use. We kept those pretty standard. But I'm going to go to the very first one, which is accessory dwelling units. As you guys recall, we made that a conditional use. Would be page, yes, 80, I think it starts on 87 on the one I'm looking
So
at.
this actually the section you're talking about is 34 TAC 558 criteria for
34,
specific
yep,
conditional
558
uses. Yeah.
criteria for conditional use. So we'll use ADUs as an example. These are kind of those non-negotiable things. And again, when we see one of these applications come in, this is the part of the staff report that you'll see that says these are all, they've either met them or they haven't. And if they haven't, that's not going to be in front of you. So this is just an example of some of the, enhancements that we made in particular, because before it was just a conditional use approval or denial. Sometimes staff would recommend some conditions for you to consider. But in some of these uses that could be a little more impactful on a neighborhood, we wanted to make sure that those were standardized across the board. So as you go down the list, you'll see all the different ones that these would, where there would be some standard conditions that apply. Does anyone have any questions about kind of that process or that new structure that we have? I think it's pretty straightforward. Hopefully we'll have one soon to kind of test it out for you guys and move from there and see how it works. With rezonings, again, nothing really has changed. You guys will see the same kind of information from staff as far as the process, pretty much the same. We've shored up our public notice requirements so that they're consistent across the board. So no matter what type of application you have, it's going to go through the same general process for, letters and posting the signs and mail out to residents, that sort of thing, so that there is a little bit of consistency and expectation from the public on what we're going to be, what they can expect to see with any type of public hearing or application. One thing that did change, and I'm not sure that we discussed it with you guys in great length, but I know it came up, are some of the concept plats. They're few and far between. Most communities do them administratively, so that's the path that we took because it either meets the standards for subdivision or it doesn't. There's really no conditions to be placed on it. So again, those will still go to council for final plat consideration and all the other processes that go along with any type of redevelopment. We just tried to be a little bit more consistent with what other communities do in regard to that. And if anyone, again, like I said, we didn't give copies of the stuff that's in Article 7, just because it isn't typically stuff the Planning Commission will see or consider. But again, if you want a copy of anything else, just send me an email and I'll make sure that you get that. Several things that we did in the code, I know you probably recall we discussed, was doing as much as we could to both preserve single-family homes, particularly in single-family neighborhoods, the way that they were originally constructed, and encourage single-family homes to be constructed as opposed to something multifamily. So we are already seeing the benefit of that with an application we have coming in for variances for 2 urban single-family homes as opposed to 2 duplexes. So that made me very happy. We can kind of test that out and see how that goes. And I expect that we will see more of that. And we'll have a report for you guys to kind of show the impacts of what the new code is going to look like down the road. Let's see. What else did I want to cover? Kristen, do you have anything to add to those items while I look really quick for something?
We did put some language in related to certain uses that are state regulated, requiring them to provide whatever information is necessary. As I said, we changed the transferability element for conditional uses in certain cases. Basically, anything that would require some type of state license still has to come to you guys. Any of the potentially serious nuisance related things would come to you guys. But if you approve a multifamily in a multifamily district and it comes back to you later because it changed ownership and you say no, you have to tear the building down. It's not something that really makes a lot of sense from a land use standpoint. So in those cases where there really would be no net change in what's going on, those will be passed down with the property. It's always something that, if there are code issues or code compliance issues, we have other mechanisms to address those. And keep in mind that any conditions you guys put on them above and beyond these required conditions would also travel with that. So if you had some concerns, you could address them at that point. Same thing with, like I said, with gas stations. It's a built piece of infrastructure with a lot of money spent on the construction. All of the issues with ages of tanks and replacement, again, is regulated by the state. We're just talking about the use of the land. If it's an existing gas station, it really, again, if you guys don't approve it, it just becomes a vacant piece of property with some questionable chemicals under the ground. So that was kind of the logic. Definitely look at that and see if there's anything that you think should be or shouldn't be part of that. We can discuss it, potentially going forward with the, like Heather said, a glitch bill. And I do have about 3 things on that list already. So
I thought we only had one. Thank you. So again, as Christian already mentioned, the sections of the code have changed. So we don't know what they are yet. We don't expect you guys to know what they are yet, as we still, learn the new code and what's where, because things did move around. We got new code sections. You'll see in there's some tables and figures that weren't in there before, really just to make it a little bit easier for things to be comprehended. Because again, the public does look at this document, and we don't want them to have trouble reading it any more than we don't want to have trouble reading it. So I hope that we've made a lot of things a little bit more clear for everyone, including council, when these sort of things come up. We did update and I know this isn't for this board, but just for everyone's information, because oftentimes applicants will come before this board for the use approval, and then they'll go to the Board of Adjustment for some type of deviation from the dimensional standards. So we did update the standards for variances, so they are much easier to understand, and applicants aren't confused on whether or not they say yes or no. It's very clear now whether the answer is yes or no, and hopefully the answer is yes for all of them, so that they can get through that process and move on with their project. We did again update all of the dimensional standards for all of the zoning districts, which included minimum lot sizes. We made those more on average for each zoning district and each type of use. We didn't increase density anywhere. We either kept it the same or decreased it in some cases. So again, that would not impact this group unless it's a use approval and we're letting you know how many units that they are eligible to have based on the zoning and the density. Let's see.
it's also worth noting that the change in the standards for variances, as well as the updates to the dimensional standards and lot sizes, will hopefully reduce the amount of variances that are both needed and approved, because the criteria is a lot harder, and the quote-unquote hardship that most people have will no longer be there, and that we've given an additional 15% of impervious surface coverage for accessory uses in the backyard, and then that 35% initially will apply to the house and the driveway, and things like that. So it solves problems that we know are there, and hopefully will eliminate the requests that just seem like they're too much for that lot, because the board's going to have a lot more teeth that they can use to say no.
So I want to talk about successive applications for a second. I think, Mr. Dahl, you were the only one here for a couple applications that came through more than once. And there was always a little bit of confusion in regards to whether or not an applicant can come back within the year, which is if you get denied, you can't come back in a year. But we wanted to make sure that people did have the opportunity to come back, especially if there were issues of concern that could be addressed in some way. So we made that section. It's section 34506, and it will be in your notebooks, as far as when it's appropriate for someone to come back before a year is up. I hopefully we made that a little more clear. So I know one example was, it was Whiskey Jack's at the time. It's now a Mexican restaurant, Tacos and Tequila, I think it's called, over there off Marsh Landing, and they wanted outdoor seating, and the folks in the condominiums didn't like that so much. So it got denied, but they did come back and ask for just a smaller area of outdoor seating. So, that's just one example, but typically it's a hard thing to do to decrease the intensity of a use that you're asking for. We've had to find creative ways to go around the previous code. So hopefully this will make it a little bit easier. And then I think, Christian, you did mention having the ability to transfer certain conditional uses. This gas station, again, a perfect example. No issues, just a new owner. No one will even know they've changed. And we've had that come up a few times as well. And so, really, there's no reason to make them go through the process. If there are no issues, there's no change in operations whatsoever. There are certain cases where we're going to make sure it comes before the planning commission, like a bar, for example, or outdoor seating potentially. But now we have a little more flexibility with what we bring before you guys and how. If it makes sense to transfer it, we want to have the planning commission have a crack at it and hear, what the owners or operators are going to do. But in cases like the gas station, it doesn't make sense. That's probably why they're not here. They figured it's already a gas station.
It's also worth mentioning that we basically reserve the right for the planning director to say, even though this one's transferable, this one's going to go to the planning commission because we've had issues with it and we want you guys to look at it again. So that probably won't happen often, but if we have problem children, then we can make you guys take a look at it and see if it really makes sense to continue that.
As far as the process goes, it's pretty much the same, especially if it's something that needs to go to council, such as a rezoning. You guys will hear it, make your recommendation to council with any conditions should you choose to place on it, and it'll go to council with your recommendation. So all that is pretty much the same. Do any of you have any questions about process, procedures, any of the new stuff in there? Any sections you want that I didn't get a chance to make you a copy of? I was literally putting these together at
So
4:50.
I appreciate the kind of the highlighted sections being readily available. I would like a full copy of the land development code once it's fully done. I know I have a copy sitting in my bookshelf at home, but there's still, it's lined out. There's,
Too, we're
typos and everything.
We're getting copies on Wednesday. We don't even have printed copies yet. So, if you want me to print out the rest of these sections, we certainly.
Yeah,
we
I
certainly
mean, I'd
can.
like
Or-
to keep this because I think
Yeah.
this is a very good shorthand reference, if you will. I don't know if everybody else wants a copy or they want to look at it online. I'd really like to have a hard copy of the whole thing.
Hard copy.
One more, please.
Yeah, I'm a look at it online type of person. Normally I like paper, but for me, because I can word search and I can go right to the section, but I'm also in it all day, every day. You guys aren't, so
Yeah, no,
a little
I'm
different.
I'm in a computer all day, every day. and
I know.
I would much rather read it on paper right now.
Again, I just gave you the sections that I know you need to have. The other ones are
This
kind
is
of,
This is great. I just want
it's
to
a,
make sure
it's
I
a
have the
good
full
start.
reference.
Yeah. But I was getting stink eye about using the copy machine all day.
Is there just kind of an easy, succinct way to call out what's missing from this? Because I don't know what's not.
I gave you guys articles 1 through 6.
Oh, that okay.
That,
and
so
nothing
that
after
yeah, the
that. So
tabs
they're
are 1 through
full
6.
articles
So
1 through 6.
full article 1 through 6. The only thing that I think is not in there is the Board of Adjustment stuff.
Yep.
To be clear, that you cut off the Board of Adjustment responsibility.
That was it. Yeah, just their standards and their kind of the bylaws section of their stuff.
Cool. That's helpful.
That was it. Yeah.
I was more concerned that there were parts missing from the other sections that
No,
I just
no.
didn't know what was missing.
Does anybody have any other questions, concerns, things you want to know more about that we haven't covered? I don't want to bombard you guys. We've talked about this a little bit for the last 2 years. Okay. Well, I appreciate y'all being part of the process. I want to say it was fun, but I'm not entirely sure that it was. But it wasn't not fun. Either way, it's done.
Yeah, I was blonde when we started.
Yeah, but Kristen and I both have a couple more gray hairs. Other than that, we're totally fine. So welcome.
I just want to say I'm really glad you guys did it because I've been, kind of not very happy with the land development code for a long time. And it makes a lot more sense to me now. So well done.
Yeah, I concur. This is a massive improvement over the previous one. So, and I'm glad to hear that the urban single family is already being taken advantage of right now. It's a
Me
huge
too.
win as far
I
as I'm
was
concerned.
so excited. You guys, shows you how exciting my life is.
Heard any feedback from the public? I mean, that's a good anecdote, but I mean, after kind of the somewhat contentious opinions on all sides? Curious.
Honestly, no. I mean, I don't know about you, but
I don't want to jinx it. This is the easiest code revision I've ever done, and I've done sign codes like 3 and 4 administrations back to back because nobody liked them. This was smooth.
yeah, Kim Lee Horn kind of gave us that same feedback that this was kind of the smoothest process. Again, I don't want to jinx it, knock on wood, but no, we really haven't. It's just we've had a lot of questions coming in from contractors who were aware the code was going to change in certain ways, and so we've been fielding a lot of questions. But otherwise, everyone's like, okay, new code's a new code. Just do what the code says now. So we haven't really heard anything one way or the other. Certainly more positive feedback from folks than anything else. Just kind of towards the end, of the process.
I would say we've solved a lot of summer parties and graduation related things with pools because people have been coming in and just filing their applications as opposed to waiting to go to the Board of Adjustment. So that's been good.
Yeah, I really applaud the team for it. I think it's a good document, and I also just kind of want to nod as well to the process of revisiting it annually. I think is a really nice thing that we've added into this whole mix of logistics here.
Thank you. All right, and thank you for the overview of where we are with LDC training. Do we have a planning department report?
Yes, actually. So I want to give you guys a chance to kind of consider. We had discussed you have the option now of moving dates and times for meetings. I spoke to the clerk's office, and they had the following. Basically, the Tuesdays opposite the Board of Adjustment are open, as well as generally Wednesdays and Thursdays. So you guys can take that and ruminate on it and see if there's a day that works better, a time that works better, and then when we come back at the next meeting or after that, you guys can decide and take a vote on it. But that's what's available, and you have the option now to decide where and when you want to meet. Well, you're meeting here, but what day? And then I think check my.
We do have one thing for the 28th, so there will be a meeting that day.
That's what I was looking up. Thank you.
Yep.
I think we've got something for the 1st in May, but I'll double check on that. The first meeting in May.
Okay, so right now our next meeting will be 28 April,
Mhm.
and then potentially in May. Okay.
Yeah,
Um,
my
we should-
zoning permit tech is out of the office today, so I'm lost.
Okay. I'm willing to take any inputs for potential better times and days to meet, but I don't think we need to do that now. We should have a discussion.
Oh yeah, I figured people need to check their calendars and everything. So
I would at least consider instead of doing it on Mondays, doing it on Tuesdays at 6. It's consistent then with Board of Adjustment. It won't conflict with. They're still going. I think I hear them. And I asked Jody if she could hear us, and she said no. So that's good. The zone thing with the new AV it seems to be working well. But there's always been that kind of hard stop for them right at 7 because of the conflict of meetings. So maybe not an issue with the upgraded and the equipment that they can't hear us, but before it was not possible. So that would be my recommendation. Either way, there's no conflict if it's on a Tuesday, the same week. So second and fourth, is that what it is?
we didn't
Mondays?
specify, but
Yeah, first. Well, Board of Adjustment is 1st and 3rd, so this one's 2nd and 4th. So that would be something I would recommend you consider is that Tuesday, 2nd and 4th Tuesday at 6. Get it over with a little bit earlier, and then again, it's consistent with Board of Adjustment. No conflicts with any council stuff because they typically do their things on Mondays. So
Okay. Yep. Think about it. We'll talk about it at the either our next meeting or before.
Just
after.
mention, I cannot remember when we, and I'm not arguing, I think Tuesday's great, but I can't remember when we didn't meet on Monday.
because I think it was in the code.
yeah, it was
It
ironclad
said
for 30 years.
Yeah. We haven't ever not met unless there was a conflict and it had to bump, which was unusual.
Like a holiday.
Go Tuesday.
Okay.
That's
Barring
all
any further
I had.
discussion on that, do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.